We have some really good competition around us.
Is there a particular issue that keeps you awake at night?
I can't say that there is, actually. I'm annoyingly a really great sleeper. So we are very much living in a world where hybrid working exists and will continue to do so. We have to adjust the business around that. That's why you've seen us open more shops in maybe areas where people live as much as areas where people work, especially in London. So sort of the outer areas of Greater London. Competition is good, and we have some really good competition around us. We have some emerging competition that I think is showing lots of entrepreneurship and lots of new companies coming onto the high street. But we also have some maybe more traditional competitors, many of whom are sort of really performing well and upping their game, and that's great. I think that's a really good thing. It's healthy competition. I think it's good for consumers. I think that will then help to drive the growth agenda as well.
Hello and welcome to another edition of City AM's Boardroom Uncovered with me, Jon Robinson. My guest for this episode is the Managing Director of Pret A Manger in the UK, Clare Clough. The MD has climbed the ranks at Pret after first joining almost 15 years ago and is now in charge of growing one of the UK's high street staples. But with rising taxes and the economic environment continuing to be challenging, what are Clough's plans for keeping Pret at the centre of workers' breakfast and lunch schedules? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Clare, thank you so much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I suppose the first question is, what's your Pret order?
Oh, that's a great question. So in the morning, it's an oat flat white. I either have the sausage and egg pot, or I have the blueberry balance bowl. So depending on whether I'm feeling, like I want something hot or cold. And then lunchtime, I love the salt beef fry roll. That's my favourite. We only launched it a couple of years ago, but it was a firm favourite from the first day. Ever
tempted by the competition?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's part of my job to know what's going on in the competition. So yeah, I admire everyone in the industry. So I'm a food industry person through and through. So I'm out and about in our shops, but also in other people's shops. And I think, look, there's a lot of great stuff going on in the sector at the minute. So as long as we keep doing, even better than everyone else, that's great.
Yeah. And the staff discount must be pretty enjoyable as well.
It's good. It's obviously a perk. But I think, I was a Pret customer long before I joined and had the staff discount as well. So, yeah.
Well, you've been at Pret for almost 15
I have,
years.
Yeah.
What's kept you there for so long?
It's going to sound a bit cheesy, but I genuinely just love my job. I love the business. I love the brand. I love what we stand for, the products that we produce. And our teams in our shops are amazing. So I've just enjoyed every minute of my time. And as they say, time flies when you're having fun. And it certainly has in my case.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been able to have fun even in the last few years or so? Obviously, coming out of the pandemic, cost of living crisis, inflation, and now we've got the uncertainty in the global economy. It's difficult to have fun when it's challenging times.
I think, look, challenge is part of leadership, and I think I've always found that facing into some of the challenges is part of the job, and you have to see how you can find the best ways through and work with the team. So yes, it's been a challenging few years. It's no secret that the global pandemic hit us quite hard, being very sort of city-centric and transport locations. It was a big impact to the business, but you couldn't go around it. You had to go through it. And so being part of, leading the business out of the post-pandemic period, has been challenging, but it has actually been, very rewarding as well. I think, I feel very proud of the shape that the business is in today and the way that we've recovered after such a, near-death crisis, really.
You've been able to recover, of course, and the country's reopened after successive lockdowns, as we know, but then it's been hit by loads of other challenges. We've got the cost of living crisis, we've got inflation, we've got the increased friction in global trade that's going on at the moment. How is that impacting Pret, and what are you doing to insulate yourselves from that?
For Pret in the UK and Ireland, we, the majority of products that we source are sourced locally, so it's not a major impact for us as it stands at the moment. And as with all of the challenges, I think we have to just look at it in the round and try and address those as much as we can. We're trying to put the customer at the centre of all of our decision making. We win or lose by our customers' choice to shop with us or not. So we just have to remain mindful of that and take sort of measured decisions. Clearly, there's inflation in the market, and from time to time, we have to pass some of that on. But as far as possible, we try and find ways to mitigate that and to change things internally to avoid that having to be the case. So, yes, it's obviously been a challenging environment, but, pleased with the way that business is coming through it.
Yeah, we've not just got the tariffs, of course, in the US. We've got the increase in the minimum wage. We've got the increase in employees' national insurance contributions. Is it inevitable, therefore, that companies like Pret has to pass on some of that increased cost to the customer?
Inflation in every part of the market, it sometimes does become inevitable. But, as I said, our sort of responsibility first is to look at what we can do to sort of offset that or mitigate it as we can. And our teams have been working really hard to do that. The national minimum wage increase, of course, has a significant impact on a business that employs thousands of people. But we want to make sure that, we find ways to work around that as far as possible. And from time to time, with inflation in wages and ingredients, does that result in some price increases? Yes, it does. But our first priority is to try and avoid that being passed on directly to the customers.
How do you do that? What does that look like in practice?
So we work really hard with our suppliers to look at ways that we can drive efficiencies into our supply chain, for example. I'm really proud to say we never do that by reducing portion sizes or quality of ingredients, but we do look at ways to be more efficient together. And we also sort of take the advantage of the growth in the new openings that we have to drive those efficiencies into the supply chain as well, and on all of our ways of working across the business.
Well, we talked, over the last 5 years or so, it has been challenging. How has that impacted your leadership? Have you learned something new about yourself that you didn't previously know?
I think I've probably learned that I was more resilient than perhaps I knew I was. But I think what it sort of instills in you is, the passion that you have for the business that you lead. And I think, I generally try and lead with great passion and energy. And I think that coupled with resilience has stood me in good stead. I think, various challenges have come up along the way, and you take each one as it comes and you sort of find a way to lead your team and the business through that. But I think it's resilience probably that I found a bit more of than I perhaps knew I had.
And we're recording this in the heart of the City of London. Yep. You can't throw a stone without hitting 3 Prets. But you've obviously got hundreds of sites across the UK. Do you go and visit those? Do you go up and down the country incognito maybe?
So it's quite hard to go incognito. So you can often get away with, I find when I do shop tours, which I do every week, both with Pano, our CEO in London, but also with members of my leadership team and the operation leads, I find that sometimes you might get a couple of shops in before, word gets out that you're in the area. But I also, I'm a Pret customer in weekends and holidays. So sometimes if you're sort of, a bit less expected, you can be incognito. But actually, one of the things I love about shop visits is the opportunity to talk to the teams, to find out what's really on their mind. They are having, the direct relationship with the customers, and they can tell us exactly how, customer sentiment is and how things are working for them. If we've launched new products, how they're going through the kitchens, what's selling, what's not selling. So actually, I tend to introduce myself and take the opportunity to spend some time with them and to find out a little bit what's going on from their perspective.
Disguise.
There is no disguise.
No.
Maybe that's something for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about work-life balance. I suppose Pret is that classic company that would be in favour of everybody returning to the office, no more hybrid working, because you get more people on the streets and more people visiting your stores. At Pret's head office, what's the work-life balance like and return to work?
So we operate hybrid working at our own office, and I definitely don't think it's for us to sort of set the policy on where people should be working. I think it's for us to adapt our business to kind of suit the needs of consumers. And now we do, we are very much living in a world where hybrid working exists and will continue to do so. So, we have to adjust the business around that. That's why you've seen us open more shops in, maybe areas where people live as much as areas where people work, especially in London. So sort of the outer areas of Greater London, we've seen the greatest sort of level of openings recently, and that reflects that change. I think we believe that, we're relevant to people for their breakfast and lunch, whether they're working in the office or whether they're working from home. So we have a great work-life balance approach within the office of Pret. As I said, we operate hybrid working. I have a young family, so, that's something I manage myself as well. So, I think it's reflective of the world that we live in today.
So more suburban openings then? Do you see that in the next few years or so?
So I think we'll continue to grow everywhere, actually. So there's still plenty of opportunity, believe it or not, despite that you can see 3, to continue opening in London. We've got loads of different formats now that we operate, anything sort of tiny little kiosks to big shops with seating areas. So even in London, I think there's opportunity to continue to grow, and we've got some really interesting sites that will come forward in the next year. But yes, more growth than we would have done historically in the suburban areas. And those shops are performing really well for us.
We've talked about the challenges facing Pret, but is there a particular issue that keeps you awake at night?
I can't say that there is actually.
No.
I'm annoyingly a really great sleeper. So I think, no, I couldn't think of anything that's been giving me a sleepless night.
Yeah, nice and relaxed and chilled.
As far as possible.
That's no bad thing. Let's talk about leadership.
Yep.
How would you describe your leadership style?
So I love working with people. I'm a real people person, and I love to build sort of great, strong relationships with my team. I think it's always important to me to set clear direction. I think that's super important in a leadership role. But once you've aligned on that clear direction, I tend to try and give my team the sort of space that they need. Everybody that works for me is an expert in their own right. They're better qualified than I am for the function that they lead. So, my role is to be there to, set the initial direction and then sort of give them the right level of coaching of support that they need. But actually, I love to see people in the team flourish and to create the environment for them to do so.
Does leadership come naturally to you, or is it something that you've had to work on?
So I would say it probably came more naturally to me than sort of I imagined. As I went through my career, you sort of progress and you take on more, first, I guess, line management roles and then slightly more leadership positions. And it was just something that I always really, really enjoyed and really enjoyed sort of building and developing teams. So, of course, you always have to, keep learning, and we don't always get everything right. So occasionally, something doesn't quite go as you hope and you have a bit of a leadership lesson yourself. But I think generally, I've lent into it and found the experience really rewarding.
Brilliant. Well, Claire, it's time for those quick fire questions now. What was your first job?
So my first job was on the tills in my local Marks and Spencer's in the food section, which I loved.
Who inspires you?
I think during my career, I've had the opportunity to work for a couple of real, what I would call kind of real retail gurus or food industry gurus. So first of all, when I was at Tesco, it was under Terry Leahy's CEOship. So that was, an incredible leadership to witness. I think he was, a fantastic part of the Tesco journey. But also very early on, I worked for a lady called Judith Batchelor, who was heading up food teams in both Marks and Spencer's and then Safeway. And I found her absolute passion for product and customer and raising the bar in terms of, product and offer, super inspirational. And I can remember being a sort of graduate in my early 20s, looking to her thinking, wow, this is the sort of role, this is the sort of person that I'd aspire to be in the future.
If you had to appoint a celebrity to your board, who would it be and why?
So actually it would be Timothée Chalamet. Yeah. So he recently gave an interview at the premiere of his film A Complete Unknown, and they asked him, where would you take Bob Dylan on a date if you could do so? And he answered Pret A Manger, which was amazing. So I guess he knows us. I'm assuming he's maybe had a few dates. I don't know if he's taken Kylie to Pret A Manger, but I imagine he knows it. And I think to bring somebody in for us that, is a generation below me, has got some views on, how to engage with, maybe younger customers and emerging customers. We're certainly seeing that coming through the business. So I think our fastest growing segment of customers at the moment is 18 to 34. So I think it'd be good to have someone like Timothée and who kind of appeals to those consumers, but is one of them in his own right as well.
Get him on the phone.
I'm sure he'd be delighted to.
Yeah. What was the best thing about your job?
We've touched on it. It's being in shops, actually. I love being in shops. When I was younger and I was thinking about my career, I knew I wanted to do something that I could see the results of my work, that you could sort of see, feel, touch. So being in shops, meeting the teams, seeing the impact of initiatives that we launched. Last year, we did some real work around kind of service standards. So being in shops and seeing the team engage with that and drive it forward, or seeing a new product on the shelf, I love it.
And if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
So my sort of plan B was to be a lawyer, which I'm not sure if I'd have been terribly good at. And I probably wouldn't have the patience for all the study for. But yeah, I think I probably would have gone down that route.
Okay.
Very different.
And finally, if you were Prime Minister for the day, what would you do?
So I think the first thing you have to do you'd have to sort of nail the Hugh Grant dance up the stairs. So get that out of the way first. And then I think, look, I'm really passionate about the UK food industry, and I think it's probably, a bit underplayed, and I think we could give it maybe a bit more support and focus. So my own degree was in food technology. Fewer people are going into food studies as a career. I think it gives people amazing careers from sort of manufacturing all the way through to retail. So I'd like to get together a kind of group of the brightest and best from the industry and think about how we can really give it the place that it sort of deserves in the UK.
A few months in now, almost a year of having the Labour government. What are your views on the government's growth agenda? Do you think that we're on the right path, or do you think there's something else that they should be doing?
I think having a growth agenda is the right thing. I think growth, of course, is good. Difficult for me to say, that I would perhaps have agreed with every single decision that's been taken, but that's their decision, not ours. I think it's for us to sort of work out how we run our own business and within the sort of environment that's been created, and make sure that we're also driving growth, because I think growth is good. Growth gives opportunities and benefits to everyone. So focused on, we've had a growth agenda in Pret for a few years post-COVID. That's been very much on our mind. So that feels aligned to what we hope for the country. So on that basis, I think it's good to have one.
Is there something that you want the government to be doing that would help Pret that they're not currently doing?
I think important to sort of keep putting the needs of British business at the heart of their decisions. I think, it's been some of the impacts that we've already covered have been challenging. So I would hope that, that balances out a little bit going forward. But look, I remain focused on, what do I need to be doing? And, things will come up as we've discovered with some of the tariff conversations in the last couple of days, and we have to navigate our way through them, whatever those challenges are.
Yeah. Looking at the UK high street as a whole, obviously Pret is such a cornerstone of any high street, basically, in any town and city up and down the UK. But what was your assessment of the health of the UK high streets in 2025?
So I think the UK high streets, is in good health. It's in great shape. We have from our sector, we have competition is good, and we have some really good competition around us. We have some emerging competition that I think is showing lots of entrepreneurship and lots of new companies coming onto the high street. But we also have some maybe more traditional competitors, many of whom are sort of really performing well and upping their game, and that's great. So I think that's a really good thing. It's healthy competition. I think it's good for consumers. I think that will then help to drive the growth agenda as well.
How do you make a company like Pret stand out? Because you say you've got startups, you've got new companies, you've got new competition coming into the market all the time. It's a brand new, shiny thing that people will be attracted to. But how do you make them come back to Pret and keep your market-leading position?
Yeah. So I think it's about a differentiated experience, in amongst all of the sort of competition and the noise. I think it's about creating something that is valuable and memorable to the customers. So that's a combination in my mind of, the shops that we build, the environments that we create, but more importantly, the products that we offer and the service of the team members that serve our customers. When I meet loyal or regular Pret customers, most of them will tell me either about their favourite Pret product or their regular Pret order, or they'll tell me about their favourite team member. And I think that's amazing, because I think there's not a lot of retail businesses that I think would have that level of connectivity with a customer where they would say, look, I really love, this individual at this shop. They serve me every day. They're fantastic. Or, I come to you because of this product. So I think that, to keep maintaining that level of sort of differentiation and experience for the customer is really important.
And obviously the vast majority of people coming into Pret is a customer that you'd actually expect, but violence in shops towards shop workers has been a hot topic over the last few years or so. I know that you introduced body-worn cameras last year. Talk to me about why that decision was made and the impact that that's had.
So we introduced that in a small number of our shops who unfortunately had a sort of a higher number of incidents of unpleasant behaviour towards our customers. And really it's just part of us putting our teams at the heart of everything we do and making sure that we can give them the support that they need. Our team members who have been part of that rollout have said that it makes them feel more confident to have the equipment should they need it. Hopefully they don't need to use it, but making sure that they have those tools where we need it. At some of our sites, in locations like stations, we operate on an almost 24-hour basis. So therefore, it's about making sure that our teams sort of feel supported and protected wherever there may be any risk.
It's a real shame that it's come to that, though, isn't it?
It is. I think, I'm not saying, it's been a huge issue in terms of incidents. I think we just know it exists, and we know that there have been some shops where it could be, maybe more likely than in others. So it hasn't been rolled off across all of the estate. It's just been put into the locations that may have a risk of that type of incident.
And has it had a positive impact? Have those incidents gone down?
So I think more than anything, the team member feedback has been positive. So it was as much preventative as anything else, in terms of just making sure the team members knew that we knew this was an issue in retail and in society, and therefore we were able to provide them with the sort of tools that they might need.
It's one of those things, isn't it? It's Co-op in particular, they talk about violence in shops, and you get CCTV that's released to the press, and you get campaigns and things like that. And it's sort of this perennial topic, especially maybe since COVID, with the cost of living crisis is going up, and people are just increasingly desperate, I think, and going into those shops. And those workers are in a vulnerable position. If you come into an office like this one that we're sitting in right now, you've got to get through layers of security in order to get to where we are. But with your shops, anybody can just walk in. How does a company like Pret, how does your company make the shop workers feel comfortable? Because it could happen anyway, even in the shops that have had no issues at all.
Sure. Look, we're in really good contact with all of our shops and our ops managers, and so there is an immediate support network, and we have the ability for our team members or our managers to reach out for support, and we will be there as soon as we can to provide support. You can't, we won't be able to make ourselves unique, as you talk about. It's a wider issue. Very thankfully, we don't seem to be one of the biggest victims of it. I don't know if that's reflective of the products or that we sell or we offer, but where we, where our teams need us, we'll always be there for them on any aspect, including difficult customers or any aggression.
We've talked a lot about challenges. It is a difficult economic environment for pretty much every business in the UK right now. But is there one in particular that you think is going to be of a particular challenge to Pret over the next few years or so? What's the top of your inbox?
I think you would expect me to say, wage and ingredient inflation is very real for us. So I think that as we've discussed earlier, we have to deal with that head on, and we have to work out how we manage that ourselves and what it means for us, so that we can again continue to create the best offer for customers, and that we need to find a way to address that ongoing. So I think that is a very, very real industry issue for us in food retail at the moment, and that will probably continue to be so.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because the rise in the minimum wage obviously affects every company in the country almost, but the other side of that is people, businesses don't like an increase in costs, but everybody wants to pay their employees as much as possible. You've got to find that balancing act. And is that quite difficult, talking to your employees and say, well, actually, it's quite difficult for us to find that margin and that balancing act?
I think we've always prided ourselves on paying our team members well. And, we have our mystery shopper bonus, which we have to offer all of our shops. So every shop every week receives a visit from a mystery shopper, and they get a score. And if the shop passes their mystery shopper every week, every team member gets a £1.25 bonus for every hour that they've worked. So that's, on top of the current national living wage, that's a 10% increase. So our staff know that we always want to make sure that we're sort of paying and leading on that basis. And that's something that we've always stuck to, and it will always be part of our DNA. As we said before, we win or lose in our shops with our customers, and it is our teams in our shops who have that frontline relationship with our team, with our customers, and therefore keeping them really engaged and motivated is kind of utmost most important. It's priority number one, really.
Are you optimistic about the UK economy? Do you think that the businesses are going to be hit by further tax hikes?
I am optimistic. I'm a self-declared slightly natural optimist, so maybe take that into account. But yeah, I'm optimistic about the UK business in the UK, and especially Pret. I think we've as we touched on, it was a difficult few years post-pandemic. We had a lot of resetting to do, and we had a lot of kind of slowed down growth when we were in that period. But things are, for us, are looking great. We're starting to grow at pace again. And it's great to be opening new shops, developing new products and categories for customers. So yeah, I'm optimistic.
Come the autumn, Rachel Reeves budgets. Have you forecast Have you sort of thought, well, she might increase taxes again? Is that part of your forward-thinking plans?
No, my plans are entirely focused on what we can do as Pret and how we can kind of drive our own business forward. So that's the position I've taken on that one.
Yeah, well dodged. Talk to me about your career then. You had a lot of success. You've got to have got to the position that you're in right now. Is there one particular success story that sticks out to you that you're particularly proud of?
So Pret would be my success story. You know, I joined Pret, as we said, 15 years ago. It's given me an incredible career in a sector that I love. And, you know, to have been part of the growth of the brand over that time has been, you know, a huge privilege. To become the UK Managing Director in 2019 was probably the proudest day of my career. You know, to have the opportunity to lead the business that you feel so passionately about in, you know, the biggest market in the homeland, you know, is an amazing thing. And I'm, you know, incredibly proud of that. As I said, when I started out, I knew I had a passion for food and retail, but I didn't know where that would take me. So yeah, it's been a fantastically rewarding career so far.
So far, yeah. The other side of that coin, of course, is aspects of your career that maybe you look back on and maybe that you regret or you think that you could have done better at if you had another chance. Is there something that sticks out there that you particularly learned from?
I wouldn't say there's anything that I sort of regret or wish I'd do different. I think where I learned the most was during the pandemic. I think that was obviously a huge change moment, and it you know, affected our business significantly. And I think, you know, you learn a lot in a crisis moment, and that was, you know, I think for many businesses it was a crisis moment, and I think that's where you find some of the deepest learning. So, do I wish that I hadn't had that come up within 6 months of being promoted to managing director? I do, but it happened and we got through it and we learned a lot and we were able to sort of get the business back on really strong footing and now kind of go again. Because
you can't make the right decision every single time, can you?
You'd be quite unusual if you were able to.
Yeah. Is that difficult to deal with sometimes, that you know you're making a decision, it's that, you know, using all the information that you've got, but it could well be the wrong one and it has consequences potentially for people's jobs? Is that a difficult burden to sometimes shoulder?
I think that's part of the burden of leadership, is that you have to sometimes make the decisions, and there doesn't always seem to be, you know, the obvious or easy answer that you have. But I try and take all of those decisions really with the interests of people and the people in our business, you know, as priority number one, as we said. Take all the information that you have. You've only got the information that you have to hand, and you make the best decision that you can in that moment. I think the key is then being able to, you know, continue to adapt and react if things don't go quite as you may have hoped.
Yeah. We've got to end the interview with talking about the famous coffee subscription policy that you guys have got. Every time the policy changes and the price changes, it's front page news almost, and it's a bellwether for the economy. Talk to me about the policy, talk to me about the subscriptions. It's still alive and well and doing well for Pret.
Yes, it is. Club Pret is still alive and well. So first launched in September 2020, very much part of our kind of pandemic recovery, the start of it. I think that was a moment where we needed to work out how we could get more people into our shops more often, and it was a great vehicle to do that. It's been a very successful part of the business. It has gone through a few different versions, again, as we worked out what kind of made it most appealing to customers and gave most value to customers, really. And so the change to the subscription that we made in the autumn of last year was settling on that to make sure that we felt we delivered, and we know we deliver the best value coffee proposition for customers on the high street. And really delighted that the vast majority of our subscribers, stayed with us on the programme and are still enjoying great value coffee across all of our shops. Any changes to the policy? Price-wise? No, the policy is £5 a month. So that's great value. £5 a month, 50% off all your barista prepared drinks. So that's locked in. That's locked in.
Guarantee. We're going to lock you into it right now.
There are very few guarantees in life. But I can say I have no plans to make any changes to that offer as it stands.
Brilliant, Claire. Thank you so much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered.
Thanks very much.